This is ChainMind, the decentralized AI network built for everyone. Just search ChainMind on Google, sign up, download the app, and you're in. That's it. You've joined the network. Run it on any device, phone, laptop, or server. Why ChainMind? Fully decentralized, fully yours.
The headlines scream that AI is out of control, but what if the real danger isn't the technology itself, but the invisible contract we've broken with the public? That contract, trust, has been eroding faster than any model can be trained, and if we don't repair it, the backlash will turn a promising revolution into a permanent dead end. First, let's look at why trust has become a scarce commodity. The last few years have seen language models go from research curiosities to products that write code, draft legal briefs, and even generate deep fake videos, all in the span of a few months. Companies have been eager to push these capabilities to market, often releasing them with a single line of disclaimer and a promise to improve over time. What they rarely share is the full story behind the model, where the billions of training tokens came from, how the data were filtered, what fine-tuning objectives were used, and what safety guards were built in. When a model suddenly hallucinates a medical diagnosis or repeats a hateful slur, the public sees a black box that spits out dangerous content, and they ask, who is responsible? Add to that the headlines about massive layoffs blamed on automation, and the feeling that machines are stealing jobs, and you have a perfect storm of anxiety. Layer on the fact that governments are still scrambling to write coherent AI legislation, some regions imposing strict bans, others offering vague guidance, and the industry looks like it's operating in a legal twilight. All these pieces intersect to create a backlash that feels less like a rational policy debate and more like a collective loss of faith in the people who built the tools we now rely on. To untangle the backlash, imagine three overlapping circles that keep feeding each other. The first circle is media amplification. A single story about a chatbot generating extremist propaganda spreads across social platforms, often stripped of the context that the developers had already deployed filters or that the incident was an outlier. The second circle is community self-policing. Researchers love to publish red team analyses that expose a model's weaknesses, great for scientific rigor, but when those papers go viral without a clear remediation plan, they add fuel to the fire. The third circle is policy reaction. Lawmakers, hearing the public alarm, draft bills that promise to curb AI's harms, but the language is usually broad, penalizing even well-intentioned developers who are trying to be transparent. The media story triggers public concern, which pressures politicians, whose heavy-handed rules then limit the ability of companies to iterate quickly on safety. The loop only breaks when a credible, proactive narrative steps in and shows that the industry can be both innovative and trustworthy. Enter Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, who recently described the situation as a crisis of trust. His words cut through the noise because he isn't just sounding the alarm, he's also sketching a roadmap for repair. Amodei argues that the problem isn't malicious intent. Most AI teams want to build useful tools, but rather a false sense of security that comes from relying on private audits and proprietary safety layers. He points out that internal governance, while necessary, isn't enough when the public and regulators demand evidence that those safeguards actually work. Critics have accused him of being overly pessimistic, warning that too much caution could scare away investors and slow progress. Amodei pushes back, saying that a false sense of security is more dangerous than measured caution. If we ignore the trust gaps now, we risk stricter regulations that could choke innovation, a drop in user engagement as people flee to alternatives they perceive as safer, and even a talent drain toward open-source ecosystems that already prioritize openness. His stance is a call to treat trust as a core product feature, not an afterthought. But here's the part most people get wrong. Transparency isn't a single checkbox, it's a multi-dimensional practice that can be built incrementally. Without giving away every trade secret, think of transparency as having 3 pillars. The first pillar is data provenance. When a company openly shares where its training data originated, whether it's web crawls, licensed corpora, or user-generated content, users can better assess potential biases and privacy concerns. The second pillar is model interpretability. Tools that surface attention maps, token-level attributions, or confidence scores turn the black box into a glass box, allowing developers and end users to see why a particular response was generated. The third pillar is governance reporting. Regularly publishing safety audit results, incident logs, and remediation timelines shows that a company is holding itself accountable over time. Full disclosure of every dataset point or algorithmic detail might still be off limits for competitive reasons, but releasing model cards that summarize data sources, known limitations, and fairness metrics is already becoming an industry norm. Publishing benchmark suites and inviting third-party red team exercises also signals a commitment to openness while protecting core IP. These incremental steps build a track record of honesty that can gradually restore public confidence. Now, imagine taking those transparency principles and embedding them directly into the architecture of AI deployment. Centralized inference, where a handful of cloud providers run every query, concentrates power, data, and risk in a few corporate silos. Decentralized inference networks, like ChainMind, flip that model on its head. Instead of sending every request to a single data center, the computation is split across a distributed ledger of independent nodes that each contribute spare GPU cycles. This architecture brings 3 concrete trust benefits. First, auditability. Because each inference step is recorded on a public ledger, anyone can verify that a model was run as intended, that no tampering occurred, and that the correct version of the model was used. Second, resilience. With no single point of failure, a malicious actor would have to compromise a majority of the network to alter outputs, a scenario that is far less likely than a breach of a single cloud provider. Third, economic inclusivity. By allowing anyone with idle compute to earn fees, decentralized platforms democratize access to AI services, breaking the monopoly of a few mega corporations and spreading the financial stake in safety outcomes across a broader community. In practice, a high-stakes application, say, an AI-assisted medical triage tool, could run its inference on ChainMind, publish the transaction hash, and let regulators or independent auditors trace the exact computation path, ensuring that the model used was the one that passed safety certifications. The transparency baked into the network aligns perfectly with Amadei's call for auditability, accountability, and shared responsibility. Policymakers, too, have a role in turning this technical promise into a societal reality. The current playbook, reacting with punitive legislation after a scandal erupts, often leads to overbroad rules that stifle beneficial experimentation. A smarter approach would start with risk-based licensing, distinguishing low-risk uses like drafting emails from high-risk contexts such as medical advice or legal judgments, and applying oversight proportionally. Safety standards consortiums could bring together industry leaders, academic researchers, and regulators to co-author technical standards that are both ambitious and feasible, giving lawmakers a clear reference point. Finally, incentivized openness, through tax credits, grants, or public-private funding, could reward companies that publish model cards, open source safety tools, or participate in public red team audits. When policy encourages transparency rather than punishes it, the narrative shifts from AI as a threat to AI as a shared responsibility. If you're wondering how all of this translates into concrete actions you can take right now, here's a practical checklist that any organization can start implementing today. First, publish a model card for every release, detailing data sources, known limitations, and fairness metrics. Second, set up continuous red team audits by partnering with external safety labs and make the summary findings publicly available. Third, roll out explainability APIs that return attention maps or token-level attributions for any given output, giving users insight into the model's reasoning. Fourth, experiment with decentralized inference for high-stakes workloads, leveraging networks like Chain to gain immutable audit trails and broader economic participation. Fifth, maintain a public incident log where any harmful output is documented, along with the remediation steps taken and a timeline for resolution. And finally, engage the community through open webinars, Q&A sessions, and hackathons focused on building safety tooling. By institutionalizing these practices, companies move from reactive crisis management to proactive trust cultivation, turning transparency into a competitive advantage rather than a regulatory burden. The takeaway is clear: the AI backlash is less about the power of language models and more about a missing trust framework. Anthropic's CEO may sound like a pessimist, but his warning is a blueprint for a future where trust is engineered, measured, and continuously reinforced. Decentralized inference networks such as Chain provide the technological scaffolding to make that vision real, offering auditability, resilience, and economic inclusivity that align directly with the pillars of transparency. When regulators, developers, and users collaborate on risk-based licensing, safety standards, and incentives for openness, the cycle of fear and restriction can be broken, and a sustainable, trustworthy AI ecosystem can emerge. If you believe that AI should be built on openness, accountability, and shared prosperity, now is the moment to join the movement. Follow Chain explore how decentralized inference can give you verifiable, auditable AI services, and become part of the community that's rewriting the social contract for the next generation of intelligent systems. The future of AI depends on the trust we choose to build today.